the Cornerstone project update. And I hope you're all as excited as we are to present this tonight. And we're hopeful that you're as excited as we leave. So it's really, it's been a labor of love and a labor of some really wonderful, talented people to take us to this point. But the most important part is how we start. And it's the way we've started every building committee meeting at 6 a.m. on Mondays for the last 2.5 years. And that's with the Cornerstone Project prayer. Lord God, we offer thanks and praise for all you have given us through your Holy Church. We ask now for an outpouring of your grace upon this parish and our labors. You tell us in Scripture, if the Lord does not build a house, its builders labor in vain. We ask you, Lord, if it be your will to build this house, may it deepen our faith, bring home the lost, and educate and evangelize our youth. Bless our building campaign and grant a generous response. May it unfold with kindness and loving accord. May our efforts be pleasing and bring you delight. Purify our intentions in the furnace of your love. Give us joyful and sacrificial hearts. And in all of our efforts, let us seek only this, the conversion of souls and the glory of your name. We ask this through your Son, Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns forever. Amen. Well, I'll let you in on a little secret that the author of this prayer, it was one of his final gifts, and I know it took several months and careful thought, prayer, Holy Spirit, everything included, our own Father Patrick Burns. So this was his gift to us as we began our building update. So every time we read this, I think of Father Patrick, and now you won't have to. So go through a little bit of what's going to happen tonight. And I know the big unveiling is what you're here for, but we also want to set up the why of what got us here, which is really important. So we'll do an introduction to building committee members. We'll go through a little bit of parish history. Some of you may know it very well. Some kind of see what got us here. You'll find out that St. Charles Parish has had forward thinkers since 1863. So it's our charge going forward to continue that thinking forward. Both comments from Father Ken, and he's going to be the one that shows our labor of love. Current architectural plans, we'll have questions. The questions, if you notice, there's notepads. We ask that you do notepads. We're going to be trying to be as firm as possible that we're concluded by 8:15. We don't want this to be a 3-hour thing. We want to make it clear and as succinct as possible. So we hope to have questions. We believe our presentation will answer some of the basic questions, and there may be some others. And if in fact, please pass that down, and towards the end we'll have someone that'll pick up the questions. If we don't get to your question, the building committee and we'll get back in the room to help through that. And if we don't get to it, or you don't have a chance to do that, your question will go with us at 6 a.m. in the morning, and we will, I guarantee, look at every single thing. When we did the fly-through a while back, that was rendition 9 of 25, and we believe we're at maybe 20 of 25. So know that we continue to listen. The architects just fell over. But other than that, it's the whole formula of us listening to you. And then we'll conclude with the blessing of the Father So we're going to go into the introduction to the building committee. And our building committee has met over the last 2.5 years at 6 a.m. on Monday mornings. And we did the due diligence. We looked at remodeling the space we're in now. We went through due diligence there. We realized and found out that it wasn't feasible or financially the best decision, so we went another direction. So it's been a process. This giving up 6 o'clock in the morning every Monday is again a labor of love. So my name is Michael Corendis. I've been a parishioner since 1984. In 1994, I became, a servant of the parish council, and it was right after this space here we're in was built. I've been through the council in the last 15 years. I've been a trustee. So 4 kids, gone through the St. Charles, my wife Mary, and we've pretty much just been our community home. My daughter is actually a teacher here now. So this is a huge fabric of this looking forward, and that's part of the motivation. So when you look at why I am here after 20-some years, we don't want to see any child left behind or any family left behind. And over the years, we've had several times where we had to turn away families because we didn't have room in the school. And this last project we did, which is part of this, put us in a position where no one will be left behind. The other motivation now with the church, even stronger, is we've got a generation of St. Charles children, families, that are coming to church and seeing church on TV. You go back there, but certainly is not the way we want to see the future. So that's my motivation to continue to move forward. I will begin to announce the building committee. Father Ken makes all of our 6 a.m. meetings. Father Patrick Bailey makes almost all of our meetings. Marge Beck is a warrior who makes them all, and she's awesome. And Mike Gadini, he's new to us and has done an awesome job. So Terry Dietrich, we're going to go down at the top. Terry Dietrich isn't here, so I'll give you a little bit. My hat's off to these people. I'm here in a capacity with the council and all that. These are the professionals. And I liken them to a small group. I'm in a small group. And I think it's similar to everyone here, that you can do a reading in a small group, and you'll have 8 people there, and each and every person will have a different idea or read it a different way. And that's when you pull it all together and you come to one idea. Everyone in this church has a vision for the future of what we're going to build tonight. And it's how do we listen to you and peel away, the good, the bad, the indifferent, and make one vision. And that's been the charge of the building committee. And they've taken their expertise to do just that, to listen and to come up with the best case scenario for the parish. Because we all don't think the same. But hopefully when we're done, we all will do our best to try to. So, Jerry Dietrich, 15 years construction building materials experience with Span Creek. Member of the parish since 2007. Wife Christina and son Turner. With all the parish activities that we and other members are involved with, the need for new church facilities are imminent. With my background, I hope to contribute to the successful design and construction of a beautiful and functional next generation church. Pat?
Good evening. My name is Patrick Flack. I've been the parish member here. Actually, I was here in the 80s and 90s. left and came back in 2014. I have a construction and general contractor background. And my family, well, I got 2 children, grandchildren in school here.
Thanks. Good evening. I'm Andy Formella. I've been a parishioner here for about 15 years. You'll get to meet my wife here in a moment. It's one of the great things about this community. The reason why I'm on the committee is to do what I can to share back some of the growth that I've experienced in the last 15 years in this department. It's absolutely amazing. My profession, I'm an electrical engineer and leader at GE Healthcare. I've been there for 29 years. So I don't follow a construction background, but I think some of the technical and project leadership experiences that I've been through hopefully contribute positively to the department of engineering.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Formella. I'm also an engineer. I work for GE Healthcare, and I worked there for more than 25 years. I joined the parish with Andy about 15 years ago. I was at St. Clair's in North Lake before then. I'm a former St. Charles parent. Our daughter went to school K through 8 here, and what really concerned me was the growth of the school and having to turn children and families away. So that's my main reason for joining the building committee. I totally agree with my sentiments.
Good evening. My name is Alex Lemberger. I am a mechanical engineer. I was working for the Spanker for 23 years. I retired 3 years ago. And we are member, my wife is Elizabeth. We are member of the St. Charles since 1994. And it's an amazing parish. I'm very proud of that, to be here, especially at this time when we are facing extremely huge development, which is going to be a new church, not for tomorrow, not for the next century, but century ahead. Thank you very much, and I'm happy and glad to be here.
Hi, I'm Mary McGinn. My husband Kevin and I have been members here at St. Charles since 1995. Our kids were baptized here, they went to school here. This has been a really wonderful experience for us and our family. And the reason I decided to be part of this committee this time is because I wanted that for our families. And we're growing. This is as much a part of this community is our extended family. And we want to make sure that that's here for others. These guys, I went to school for engineering. I'm a project manager at Microsoft now, and hopefully I bring something. But really, it's only for a little bit.
Thanks, Mary. Our next two are very key, especially when we're looking forward. We needed eyes and ears and that are looking into the future. And we have two of our millennials that have been a great support. Jacob Notch can't be here tonight. He's an electrician, member of St. Charles, and I believe that the worship community spaces that are well balanced and useful are critical to spreading the gospel. My desire is to help the new space be well planned and useful. Doesn't sound like a millennial, does it? It's pretty awesome. Bill?
I'm not actually sure if I'm a millennial. I know that right in the cutoff, but my name is Bill Peterson, and I have been a member here for 5 years with my wife Colleen, and we have 4 kids, and number 5 is coming any day now. Hopefully not too soon, but my son Isaac is with me. I'm a licensed professional civil engineer, and I work in construction. Right now I'm building this interchange, but what I'm really excited about is building this church, building something beautiful for the Lord, and that we may all grow closer to the Lord through this beauty and through this space.
Thanks, Bill. Gene Budensky isn't here also, and another consistent member. Parishioner for 25 years. On the building committee for the previous capital improvement. Civil engineer from Marquette University, master's prepared construction management. Been in construction his entire professional career. Projects range from commercial to large residential up to $35 million buildings. St. Charles is a dynamic, growth faith community with powerful ministries. I want to contribute to the success of our faith community. Good luck tonight. Kurt?
Hello, I'm Kurt Whelan, and I'm a professional engineer in the mechanical discipline. I've been a parish member since 3rd grade, so somewhere early 70s. Let's see, my wife and I, we have 3 children. Margaret's over here. Joan, Ellen, and Luke. And Joan's currently studying in Rome, and Ellen's going to graduate from Arrowhead, and Luke is a freshman at Arrowhead. And they're all alumni from the St. Charles School.
Thanks, Kurt. So all our, this is our team, and I love them all. I mean, it's awesome to have that kind of commitment, and they are working for you. That we are all working for you. That's been our passion, and everything that you say, one way or another, gets back and gets put into the mixing bowl. So thank you. And it would be remiss if we didn't bring up Doug Barnes and Kurt Zimmerman, our architects, who when I said 20 of 25, they all cringed to get a bit, but they did that when I said it was 9 of 25 too, so we are getting closer. And they've been great partners in this whole 2.5 years. So St. Charles, steeped in history. So as you see, it's a looking forward parish we belong to. In 1863, St. Charles was formed. And in 1908, the first church was built. And that was up on the hill. Beautiful little church, as a matter of fact. Mary lived in that church. So this is a statue from up on top up here. So that's one of the original. In 1991, or excuse me, on the church, when they were on the hill, they had the foresight to want to build a school. And a matter of fact, at that time, this I believe used to be a race track, horse track, this area here. They bought the property to build a school. There's even talk of maybe a high school back then. In the old concepts, they would build the school and they would have the church in the gym, and then eventually the elders wanted the church to be built out on the greens out there. So in 1991, we started to grow from a country parish to a little more population. In 1991, we had 800 families. And the worship space, was a gym, and the decision was to, let's modify that into the space we're in today, the church we're in today. That left a little bit of void with not having a gym. It left a void with some of the parishioners that wanted the church out in the field. But as we continued to turn forward, in 2002, we discerned the parish, and we began to look at the growth that we needed to do, and there was another project. And that's when we added several classrooms. We added the gym. We did some renovation, thank you. Yeah, in the church, and the Borromeo room was a courtyard. So that was a nice project. What we did not address was adding more seats. So we went from 800 families then to close to 1,400 at that point. So flash forward to today, and I think we're at 2,600 families, and we're in an 800 basically built for a church for 800 families. So it kind of gives you a reason why we're on Sundays we have the Borromeo room filled with chairs. Is So there's some nice pictures there's St. Charles on the Hill. That was the Cornerstone lane, and then obviously a mass going down there, so that's the beginning. And there's the first building, that's 1956 to 59. The school opened in 59, and you can see the renovations throughout the years as to what we did at the space we're in today. And we're in a growing community, and that's another reason why. Waukesha may be flat as a county, but all the demographics point to our area, and you can just see by all the family farms that are being gobbled up and turned into renovation that, you know, our future here, it's not, we're at 2,600 families, you know, where are we going to be, you know, going forward? And those are some of the things I'm sure that Father will talk about, you know, with the demographics and the situation with number of priests we have. There's things that we certainly have to be aware of. And as our forefathers, we have to look forward for the young ones that are coming up, for sure. So, just a little thought so you understand. I was also on the last building project, and we built that for $4.2 million. And it was a $6.5 million project. We didn't have $6.5 million. We built a shop. So when you see or hear dollar figures, know that there are ranges, and there's ways to work towards goals. And we've done that in the past. It worked here. Within 3 years, we had just about every room filled, and we never had one extra pledge program or anything. So just understand when we move forward that it's looking forward and having faith. This last building project we just finished, which is part of the fundraising effort that we had here, we added the STEM room, we added 3 classrooms. Know that, I don't know if all of you know this or not, but the timing of that was critical in the fact we reached the peak of our school enrollment. And it would have been the 3rd time in 12 years that we would have had to turn families away. As a matter of fact, there were 10 families that were dependent on having the extra space. Why? What do I mean by that? There were had to be 2 7th grades, there had to be 2 2nd grades. We couldn't accommodate that. Families would be broken, or they would go to other schools. So that building project saved 10 families of being able to have a St. Charles Catholic education. If you remember from the beginning, that was one of my motivations. And know that, I mean, it's extremely, if any child, any family wants to become part of our community, looking forward, that is one of the things we need to look in our heart and make sure we accomplish. So you can see the growing community, and these are just some pictures of the area, kind of discerning the opportunity going forward. You can keep going. You can see the growth. We've got some. One of the things we did when we built 2002 was we were a Sunday destination. Our goal was to be a 7-day-a-week destination. And the ministries we have today, we've certainly accomplished that goal, if not busted through that goal. So St. Charles is a 7-day-a-week destination parish. We have ministries up and down and opportunities for just about anyone. And that's what community is about. And that's what keeps our spirit alive. And that's what is going to take the spirit of our young ones going forward, knowing that they're a part of a great community that loves and cares for each other. So now, I know you're really tired of listening to me, so the keynote speaker, the man of the hour, our fearless leader and We are so fortunate to have Father Ken.
Thank you, Mike. I just want to get our architects to stand up here in case you don't know them. They kind of slipped by us. And so, Kurt Zimmerman, Doug Barnes. So the question is, why are we building a 1,250-seat church? If you would have been at the 9 o'clock Mass last weekend, it was Mother's Day, the church was filled 15 minutes before Mass was supposed to begin. We had the Borromeo room set up with chairs, but it wasn't enough. People were standing against that wall. So people were scrambling to unfold those chairs and get everything set up. That's one reason. The second reason is the number of priests is diminishing. And we have to have a church that's large enough, for example, so on Sunday morning, instead of having 3 Masses, we could perhaps have 2 Masses in the church to accommodate that. It just makes sense for many reasons in the future. And what Mike was saying is also true. This area is growing like crazy. So it doesn't take, just look at all the building that's going on around us, and you'll know that the worst mistake we could make would be to build a church that's too small. So we're really trying very much to respond to what's happening here. The other thing is, I need to tell you, reiterate what Mike said, this is still a work in progress. We have given very little attention to the renovation of the school. Pardon me, very little attention to the renovation of the school. We really haven't looked at how we've configured the new office space. It's also true that we haven't directed our attention to the Vincent Hall Food Pantry and where that might go, because one of the things I've learned being on this committee is a great deal of it has to do with focus. So when we were looking at the school addition, the campus extension on the west that has the STEM lab and the new entrance to the gym, we concentrated on that for months to get it set so that in 4 months we could build the building. And now we really have been concentrating on the church to try to get that as clear as possible. And then we'll begin going to other parts of it, including the Vincent Hall Food Pantry. Can I have the next slide? So we've been traveling. We've been, I think, overall to 13 different churches and several different trips that we've taken. But in particular, we wanted to see the new church building that's going on. This is St. Cecilia's in the Dells. It's not even open, I think, a full year. And you can see it's a very traditional church. If you look at the new churches that are being built now, the new churches are traditional churches. And there's a reason for that. I would say, from the 50s on to just maybe a decade ago, we were doing a lot of experimenting with what churches should be. And I'll give you an example. And a lot of this came out of Germany after the Second World War in Europe, when many of their churches were destroyed, so they rebuilt. My home parish is St. Aloysius. The pastor got the plans for that church. He was traveling in Germany and saw a church that he liked and asked the pastor if he could get a copy of the blueprints, brought them back and somewhat replicated them into what became St. Aloysius Church. If you go to Blessed Sacrament on the south side of Milwaukee, that church was actually designed by an architect in Germany. So we were trying all different kinds of things. But I think what we've realized now is the value of traditional symbols. And so this church really is very much a traditional church. Thank you. But this is St. Cecilia's. If you're coming back from the Dells sometime and you want to see, it's a great place to see. This is St. Pius X in Granger, Indiana. A pretty spectacular project. You go into it, on the outside it's this very carefully built red brick church. On the inside, very carefully decorated. You can see from the altar looking into the church, and also from that way looking back to the entrances. When we would go to these churches, we would ask them, what do you think works really well here? And what were some mistakes that you made? And it's amazing, every time you ask that mistake question, you learn a great deal. But some of the things we have in our design came from this church. For example, the common room instead of crying room. So this one. If you're outside of Bernie, Illinois, and you go to the west, St. Raphael is an amazing story. So they were worshiping in what was a renovated barn. It was a combined parishes, and Cardinal George came out for confirmation, and he said, you know, you really need a decent church. They just bought this piece of property. He said, you know, in Chicago, there are all kinds of closed churches, and I'm wondering if you couldn't take one of those and take it apart and then rebuild it, or you need a church. So this is Indiana limestone, this church. They took it apart piece by piece and moved it into the middle of this farm. But the interior of that church had been deteriorated, so they got the interior stuff from another church and put that on the inside of it. Next to the church, when you're out in the fields there, they've got the bell towers in pieces laying on the ground. You're not going to want to hear how much this is costing. I remember right, I think it was 30 million. So, but the reason it was interesting to us, it's an example of how you can take old things from other churches that aren't being used and incorporate them into a new church. And that's something that we very much want to do. Next slide, please. Now we're going to begin looking at the exterior of the church. And just to give you an idea, it's very different from what you saw in the first flyby. And again, I need to stress, this is a work in progress. Changes are going to be happening all along. So the exterior, please, the next one. So this is an aerial view of the new church. Maybe if we could have the lights dimmed a little bit. So this gives you an idea of how the parking lots lay out. There's a porte cochere. It's in the cruciform. It has a central dome, a metal roof. It has a cupola, the bell tower, a very prominent entry plaza and portico. It has a distinct school entry, so the little dome that you see off on the right, that's over the entrance to the school. There's parking for 350 cars. There are improved driveways and traffic flow. It's very carefully integrated with the school. We paid a great deal of attention to security as well. We have the next step. This is what it'll look like from the front. You can see that in that plaza that's in front, just to demonstrate, that's where we could build the Easter fire. So it's actually designed so that that could happen. So this is the entry from the west. You can see again the central dome, the bell tower, the formal landscape with the Easter fire at the plaza, the porch. It'll have bronze doors, a rose window above the door. You can see the porte cochere far more clearly now in the school entrance on the other side. Let's see the next one. So this is the view from the southeast. Again, you can see the dome, the cruciform in the shape of a cross. In the back of the church is where the adoration chapel is. When we showed you the first one, the adoration chapel was in the base of the bell tower. That's no longer the case. The adoration chapel is now in the back. It's also the accessible entrance. It's right next to that adoration chapel in the back. It just improves drive and traffic flow. Next one, please. So this is from the east. Again, the dome, the cupola, the adoration chapel. You're looking right at the adoration chapel there, coming from the back of the church. The grounds are landscaped. You can see a little bit on the side of the porte cochere. The porte cochere is designed so there could actually be 2 cars under that if we wanted. Now we're going to go to the interior. Next slide, please. And again. So that's the interior of the church as far as we got. You can see, just to give you some idea, the idea is to focus people's attention when they walk into that church on the sanctuary. It's interesting, when we visited the new churches, some of them you would walk into, and there was so much stuff going on in the church that the sanctuary really got lost. And To me, when you walk into it, especially if it's a new church, and you walk into it, you should go, wow. And that's really what this is designed to do. You can see that it has very slightly sloped floors. It's a cruciform layout. It seats 1250. It has the formal processional central aisle. It has a screen in the back with statues of the 12 apostles in there, and Mary Magdalene. You can move behind that screen. It has a canopy that's suspended, and underneath that canopy, you'll see better on other slides, is this crucifix, the crucifix in this church. It has the central dome, and as is often true in European churches, those four circles, there's called lunettes, and in those lunettes are the four evangelists, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Stained glass, Stations of the Cross. The baptismal font is here just as you enter the church. You know, in the old churches, they would always put baptismal fonts at the entrance of the church to remind that baptism was the sacrament by which you enter the church. So that's where the fonts would be. If you go into St. Peter's Basilica, for example, the first, as you walk, as you're looking at that main altar in St. Peter's, the first little chapel on the side is the baptismal chapel, right there at the front. So in our new church, that's where the baptismal font will be. But when we're baptizing back there, it's still possible for the assembly to turn around and look and see what's going on. Notice it's very light. The next view, please. This is the view of the sanctuary from the north. And it's interesting, so if you just follow with me, you can see the suspended baldacchino. You can see the cross hanging from it. The back wall with the statues in it. Then this entrance actually goes up into the hallway, and through that entrance you can access this area, because this will really become the family center, our gathering space. And then off to the right, on the bottom, you see those glass areas. That's the calming room. It's a big calming room where you can go in there if the baby is crying, wait till the baby calms down, and then come back into the church. It also has access to hallways. One of the things we noticed with this crying room is parents really like to take kids and sort of run the energy off them a little bit and then bring them back into the church. So that gives people that access. The common room idea is one that we saw in the Ranger, Indiana, at St. Pius. The next one, please. So this is looking back from the altar. You can see the choir loft with the organ. The pipes arranged in such a way as you can see the stained glass window. The altar in the sanctuary is several steps high, so with a slightly sloped floor. The seeing will be very easy in this church. One of the things I've been amazed at when I end up sitting in the pews where you are instead of being up here is if you're way in the back behind a lot of people, it really is very hard to see. And that will not be true in this church. Also, up in that choir loft, there will be a room that will look out onto the congregation. And that's where somebody will be able to control the lights and the sound system, so that the lights and sound in the church are always exactly as they should be. It'll have a plaster ceiling, and the plaster ceiling will make sure that the acoustics in the church are good. The next one, please. So this is the view from the choir loft. So now you're kind of looking down into the church. You can see the circles, those lunettes, once again. You get kind of a better view of what that back wall in the sanctuary will be like. You can see also the central dome above. Choir loft will have tiered seating, ample space for instruments and storage. The bell tower is where the elevator will be. So that's one of the reasons why the Eucharistic Chapel is not there. The elevator has 3 stops: the choir loft, the main floor, and the basement that's underneath. So under the narthex, or the vestibule of the church, and the office spaces, there is an 18,000 square foot basement. It'll have, you'll see when we get to the floor plan, it'll have space for 6 classrooms, it'll have bathrooms downstairs, and the access to that is through the bell tower. Let's take the next slide. So this is the Eucharistic Chapel. something that's a little different than the way this is portrayed. In the Eucharistic chapel, these two statues will be where that painting is underneath the rose window. And in the middle of these two statues will be a statue of the Sacred Heart that's standing like this. We haven't put the pedestal in the school where we're going to install it until the church is done. It also is one of the original statues from the very first church up on the hill. So it's isolated from the church, and by the way, around the edges, you can see all those lit niches. Very generous donation. A woman came in one day, knowing how much I did my graduate work on the saints, knowing that she, because she had a priest brother, collected relics and gave the parish 35 relics. The 12 apostles, St. Peregrine, the saint who's invoked for help with cancer, and the parish sculptor, the one that does the wood carvings every year for the Christmas crib, we get a new carving, Bruce Berenson, is going to carve a statue for every one of those relics. And those statues and the relics will be in the niches all around the side of the chapel. So it'll be not only a Eucharistic chapel, it will also become a reliquary chapel. So this is the entrance to the church, the narthex. It's very generous. It has the wood ceiling so that we kind of lower the ceiling a little bit so that when you walk into the church kind of explodes in front of you. It has leaded glass surrounding doors, and it has all kind of the workspaces, the vesting sacristy, the server's sacristy, the bride's room, the usher's room. All those rooms are down this way. And if you go this way, it gets you to the porte cochere. So if you drop somebody off in the rain or in the winter, that's the way they would come and then enter the church. So if you go to the next slide, please. This is the layout, and you can see in green on the right is this church, the church that we're in. And you can see the size of the new church up on the top. And, you know, if I can just point out here, area here is the new office. We know where it is, we know how big it is going to be, but we don't exactly know how it's going to be configured. We haven't talked about that a lot. This space, the church, will be, if you notice, there's some churches that they're building now, they put gathering spaces in front of the church. We are not going to do that because this area will become our gathering and meeting space, and it'll be a series of areas. It's this church, part of the old hall or mail room. So it seemed redundant to do it at the front of the church. I mean, it's a very gracious vestibule, but it's what we really, all we really need. The next slide shows the basement and the choir room. So you can see where it's purple, those are, that's even better. So where it's purple, you get to see those are 3 possible classrooms. The 3 gold rooms that are next to it are the 3 classrooms that will be set up solely for doing the new form of religious education here, Catechesis of the Good Shepherd. So those will be dedicated spaces for that catechesis. And there are bathrooms down there. You can see the bottom of the bell tower way at the top is where the elevator is. And this part over here, the separate part, that's the choir. So there's some things I want to address before we have you write your questions out on the pieces of paper. When are we going to build it? Do you remember when we began fundraising and working with our consultants? We said this was 5 years of fundraising. We almost completed 2 of those 5 years. So the idea was when the 5 years would be finished, that's when we would put shovel into the earth and we would break ground. And that's still the plan that we're operating under. However, it doesn't mean that if conditions or circumstances change that we couldn't do it earlier. But at this point, the plan would be a little longer than 3 years, and I think the architects have said it would take 16 months, 15 to 16 months to build the church and do all of this work. And some of it, the work in the school is contingent on what's happening in there, whether school classes are on or not. The cost. Of all the churches that we visited, we didn't find one that was less than 16 million in cost. But the truth is, we really don't know what this is going to cost us. We're still in the process of trying to say that things are very fluid. And we can do, as Mike said when he was talking, with the last renovation, they just built the shell. And over the years, you added on to it and enhanced it until it got to be where you want. If you remember when I came, one of the first projects we undertook was to finish the kitchen because it was just a big empty room. So how we approach the church and its costs, that's something we haven't settled on yet. So there's one of the advantages of having a few years to work on it is we have a few years to work on it. So it's still in process, very much fluid. But now if you have other questions, if you want to take those little cards that are at the ends of your pews, there are pencils there, and write your questions, and we'll come around and collect them, and then try to answer the questions for you. We're doing this, by the way, it just seemed easier than running around with a microphone all the time. So I'll give you a good 5 to 10 minutes to write your questions. You want to know what the first question is? Is there any way we can start tomorrow? I mean, if we can talk contributions afterwards. The truth is, we really couldn't start tomorrow because we have a lot of finishing work to do and making these plans final. But to me, it's important that you see, when you saw the slides, and they're also, those pictures are in the more mail room afterwards. You can go and look at them up front more in detail. You can see how far we've come from when we started this. And it's Monday after Monday after Monday of talking things through. But it really has come a long way from that ninth rendition of what the church is. So why are we getting away from the semi-round seating? So that kind of seating structure, what you might call the auditorium seating structure, which is very much what this church is, was something that was being done in the 80s and the 90s. In many ways, it was borrowed from the United States evangelical churches. Like if you've ever been to Elmbrook or what used to be Westbrook or Oakwood, and you're on the inside of those churches. They're very much an auditorium seats now. The seats often are even auditorium seats. Evangelicals build churches like that because evangelicalism comes from tent revivals. So people would be in a tent and they would be set up like that. So when they actually began to build buildings, they built them very much like this. Our tradition is much more what you see here, a cruciform, cross-shaped tradition. But I assure you, in this church, the architects have worked very hard. You will see well. You will feel a part of the congregation. It will accomplish all the things and more that an auditorium, a church in the round does. So it's hard to tell from slides how that works. But if you would visit some of the new churches that we did, the one in Granger in particular, when you get in there, you know that this is one assembly, one congregation. It works very well. What we did change from the original flyby, if you remember in that flyby, this part of the church was real long and narrow, and people had said, we really don't like it to be that long and narrow. So we really have moved it up and put more into the side wings. So there's more of an equidistant seating for all three of those wings. So this one I will refer to Father Bailey. I'm not supposed to know about. Were there any thoughts to build a rectory? Yes, you can find him afterwards. This is a young priest's thing. This one asks, so what we have seen tonight might change several times. In the fundamental basics of it, the answer is no. I mean, we've really come to the point of getting a good handle on what we want to put in it, what we don't want to put in it, and how it should be arranged. What changes now are different details. But this is really kind of the fundamental layout. Will all music choirs be from the choir loft? The answer is no. So in the new church, there will be a music space, but it will not be on this side. It will be on the side where the ambo is. Because now if you're the cantor that sings the psalm, you have to be separated from the choir and sit here until you sing the psalm. Then you can go around to the choir loft. This loft is located really on the wrong side. So in the new church, it will be located on that side. But the new church will have a fully musical choir. So we have the benefit of both. St. Cecilia in the Dells, there is a communion railing as in the past. Will there be a communion railing in the new St. Charles? The answer is no. They're putting communion railings in Madison because the bishop mandated that parishes have communion railings. They're not necessary. Are they bad? They're not a bad thing. But if we put this church would not be set up so that we couldn't put a communion railing in. We're just not going to do it as part of the original bill, first bill. How can we be sure that after all of this, the church will have a good sound system? Well, of course, a decent sound system is essential to any church, but the thing that will be different in this one, so, I mean, you can talk to Dr. Matthews if you want. He has a little box there in the sanctuary with all the amplifiers in it. I don't know if you noticed, but before Mass, he's adjusting them and correcting them, trying to get the sound right. Then the sound for this microphone that we use is in a box that's in the sacristy back there. So if somebody was back there trying to control it, they would have no idea what was going on in the actual church. And the lights, when we did the lights, they're kind of in a closet next to the ushers room over there, where there are these light switches. In modern churches, they don't do that anymore. They have a room that actually has access to the church, and then you have somebody up there who controls the light and the sound. So the sound and light in this church should be superb. Is 350 parking spots enough? And where will they be? So, that's a very good question. We've talked about that. So, we have property all along the fence. But there's all kinds of scrub trees that are there that are growing. So part of the idea would be all those scrub trees would be taken out. There would be parking over here in this area. That would be largely the handicap parking. And parking all along the fence, probably the staff parking there. And then all of the parking would be down this way. So we would take part of the green field that now looks like a soccer field, but I haven't seen anybody playing soccer there since I've been here 8 years. So the parking will be down there. And the reason is, say we have an event in the church and an event in the gym, that far away parking can be for the gym event, or on Christmas or Easter, or Mother's Day is the best. But we're still talking about that. We haven't settled entirely. Where will the St. Vincent de Paul food pantry be located? We're not sure. We haven't really gotten to that yet. Will we have a dedicated space for high school ministry? The answer is yes, and again, that's something we haven't discussed at all. But it should be pretty clear how much we value high school ministry here. We're the only parish in the Archdiocese, to my knowledge, that has 2 full-time youth ministry. So, where would the funeral reception be held? And food items, you're in. This would be a place where we could hold all kinds of meetings, including receptions for funerals afterwards. And The Borromeo room will still be a functioning room, although the Borromeo room, when the change happens, will become the school cafeteria. So on a weekday, if the funeral was occurring, the food service would be in this room. Can the choir be more towards the front so they can be seen by the parishioners? The answer is yes. It'll be in both places, in the choir lounge and off to an area on the side, much as it is now, but it'll just be on the other side. This is a question for the pastor. Will the church be in debt after construction? How much, roughly? So you will find that the Strategic Planning Committee, the Finance Council, the Building Committee is a wonderfully conservative group of people. And will there be some debt? The answer is yes. Are we going to indebt ourselves so that we can function well as a parish? The answer is no. At the overnight, I had the occasion to talk with a priest in a parish that shall remain nameless, where the last 3 years he's been offered an associate pastor with him because the parish is sizable. And in those 3 years, he's turned the associate pastor down every year because they don't have the money to pay him. So that's the parish that really went way out in debt, and that will not be us. How much do we need to raise to begin the project? What do we intend to borrow? Again, that's a question that we're not certain of. How much do we need to borrow? You have to have half. The diocese insists that you have half of the cash in the bank before you can borrow the other half. So let's say we want to borrow $2 million. We have to have $2 million in cash in the bank in order to do that. And the reason the diocese has that rule is because in the past there were parishes that got in trouble. They would borrow way beyond what they had at the beginning of money, and ended up much as the priest I talked to at the overnight. How many people can be in the Eucharistic Adoration Chapel? I think 40 was the number that we would say. Will there be kneelers? Are we Catholic? Will the choir loft be handicapped accessible? The answer is yes. So the elevator goes to the choir loft as well. If the school runs out of classrooms, will we use those 6 basement classrooms for the school? And the answer is yes. So another thing that happens is the current school office is in what used to be a classroom. And that office will be in the new office wing that's going to be built right across from it. So that becomes another classroom as well. So the school really should not be in trouble for space. And I think I've covered all the ground here. And it is neat where we're at. Anybody else have a question that I missed or didn't really get to that you want to raise up? Also, the building committee members, the architects will be in the Borromeo room afterwards. When you step in there to look at the pictures, if you have questions, you can ask us one-on-one there. Yes.
I just really want to say thank you, Father, and to the building committee and everyone that's been involved in planning for these 2.5 years.
So please stop. Yes.
We didn't hear Father Patrick Bailey's question.
You're going to have to talk one-on-one with him. So, yes. So if there are no more questions like this, but you can ask whatever you want in the Borromeo afterwards. And I hope that you would stop in there because when you look at the renderings close up, you really do get a better feel for what this is going to be like. So let me bless you before you step in. May the blessing of Almighty God, the Father, the Son, and Holy Spirit come upon you and remain with you forever. Amen.